Okay, story time. This is my favorite book that I got from the library at the university. It's by Sigmund Spieth, and it is called Stories Behind the World's Great Music. This one is Beethoven Learns About People. The trouble with you, Beethoven, said Johann Nepomuk Malzel portentously, is that you have no showmanship. A good composer, but completely ignorant of what the public wants or how to give it to them. The stocky little man with beetling brows and a heavily lined face received this comment in silence. Ludwig von Beethoven was used to being criticized. Everything he composed seemed to fill someone with horror or indignation. Why couldn't he write such charming pieces as were constantly produced by Pleyel and Dussek and Hummel, all tremendously popular and sure to win immortality for their creators? Well, it was just not his style. He would write as he chose, and they could take it or leave it. But Malzel had an idea. He was always full of ideas, a really successful inventor in a way. One of his best ideas was the metronome. That little wooden pyramid that still stands on pianos with the pendulum swinging wrong side up, keeping time for thousands of suffering children who have been forced to practice ever since the time of Beethoven and even earlier. Some of us may not have liked the metronome, but at least it was practical. Malzel's inventions were not always practical. He invented an ear trumpet that did not work, and often he spent his time and scientific knowledge on absurd novelties that were neither practical nor artistic. One of these was what he called a panharmonicon. Kind of like a necromonicon, but not really. Okay, panharmonicon. Ancestor of many a music box, an instrument played by a revolving cylinder in a cabinet, run by bellows and making noises like a brass band. It was the panharmonicon that now gave Malzel an idea. I have it, he shouted. You write a special symphony for my panharmonicon, and we'll present it in a benefit concert, and then request it for our own benefit and make a lot of money. Then repeat it for our own benefit and make a lot of money. Then we can go to England and make a lot more. They like mechanical music over there. I do not compose for machines, answered Beethoven stiffly. My symphonies are for great orchestras. There you go again, cried Malzel. No showmanship at all. You are hard up, but you refuse to accept a fine idea for making money and adding to your reputation, too. The musicians know you, but how about the big public that is always looking for a new sensation? How about all those overgrown children that have no intelligence but plenty of money to spend? Please, Beethoven. Do it for my sake, he pleaded. It needn't be good music. Make it something descriptive and imitative. Why not Wellington's Victory? That would be popular, and we can raise money for the soldiers that were wounded at Hanu. Make a fast fugue out of God Save the King with hurrah effects, and bring in some other tunes like Malbrook, dismally for the French, and then Rule Britannia to show that the English are winning. I hear it already. I could almost do it myself. He began marching up and down, blowing on an imaginary trumpet. Perhaps that was the trouble with Wellington's Victory, later known as the Battle Symphony. Malzel could have written it himself and almost did. Beethoven actually borrowed the tunes of Malbrook, Rule Britannia, and God Save the King, with the fast fugato as specified. Put in some cannon shots and drumming effects, and permitted the absurd hodgepodge to be arranged for the panharmonicon. But first he made an orchestration, and it was in this form that the piece was introduced at a benefit concert December 8th, 1813. To his own amazement, Wellington's Victory won an immediate and sensational success, appealing to a public that had thus far been only dimly aware of the composer's importance. His great Seventh Symphony, introduced on the same program, also made a hit, but it was the arrangement of the familiar tunes with the cheap imitation of battle noises that really captured the enthusiasm of the audience. There was also a mechanical trumpeter, another Malzel invention, which played marches by Pleyel and Dussek, probably pronounced differently, with full orchestral accompaniment. The concert made so much money for the wounded soldiers that it was repeated 4 days later, and again the success of the Battle Symphony was extraordinary. Malzel now began to talk seriously of his proposed trip to England. He made Beethoven a loan of 50 ducats. There's a way to say that. To tide him over, and a third concert was arranged just after New Year's Day of 1814. This time, the mechanical trumpeter was omitted, and it became an all-Beethoven program, with some of the ruins of Athens music substituted. Maelzel was wise enough to let the Battle Symphony establish its popularity in orchestral form before giving it the additional novelty of the panharmonicon. The two friends made enough profit on this third concert to justify the English tour, but Beethoven characteristically changed his mind. He was solvent again, so why not stay in Vienna? Maelzel threatened to take the symphony and the panharmonicon and tour England alone. Beethoven paid him back his 50 money and refused to give up the symphony. Nevertheless, Maelzel took his machine to Munich and there gave two performances, piecing together the music from memory. Beethoven promptly sued him. It was not a pretty story. The former friends fought each other in the courts, but Wellington remained the only victor. Eventually, they made up and shared the legal costs of their foolish feud. Maelzel finally drifted to the United States, made plenty of money, and spent his last years in Philadelphia. He died at sea July 21st, 1838, on the brig Otis, en route from Havana. The Battle Symphony was forgotten amid the treasures of far greater music produced by its composer. But one other incident remains to immortalize the inventor of the metronome. In the days when his friendship with Beethoven was at its height, they were together at a dinner party. As a tribute to the inventor, Beethoven improvised a little round, technically known as a canon, which he taught the guests at the table, himself singing the soprano part, ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta, lieber Maelzel, served for a text in imitation of the metronome itself. The melody later became the chief symphony of the second movement of Beethoven's Eighth Symphony, a lovely bit of music, for which both of these irascible gentlemen may well be forgiven their misunderstandings.